Good morning, YouTube. It is 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and we are sponsored today by Super Clear Super Epoxy Resin Systems. Just kidding, not sponsored. This is part 2 of our Super Clear Epoxy review. So if you saw a video that I did about 2 weeks ago using the Super Clear tabletop epoxy and the clear bowl I did just a pure resin project at that time. So in this one, what we're going to do is do our typical wooden scrap bowl and see how the epoxy reacts to the wood. Again, not sponsored. I thought that was just a cool intro. The epoxy came with a sticker, so I decided to put that on my pressure pot because that seems to be the thing that all woodworkers do, is put stickers on pressure pots. So there's my first sticker. So anyway, got the resin set up, put about 64 ounces worth of resin in here, and we had this fine yellow glitter, and I was like, okay, let's see what we can get out of it. Initially, I was really excited about the color once we added everything, but once I started to look more at the bowl itself, I'm like, kind of looks like vomit a little bit, so I might call this one the vomit bowl. But it's not so much about the color of the bowl as much as it is about how the epoxy reacts. So put it in the pressure pot 4.5 hours. I was actually doing multiple projects, and that's why there's that other top board in there. But when I set up the resin, it was filled to the top, but we obviously have this gap here. So I'm like, okay, I want to give this resin a fair shake, and decided to come back, put it in the pressure pot yet again for 4.5 hours, and just decided to put in clear epoxy this time. So this is still the same resin, same brand. We're just using just clear this time. We're not adding any color or anything to it. But the bowl itself is pretty much clear, so you can't even barely tell. It's crystal clear though. If you saw my first video review that I did on this epoxy, I really like this product. It's really, really good. So 4.5 hours again, like I said, in the pressure pot. Took it out of the mold, and it is crystal clear. You can see the different layers. You can see where the color is, and then that top layer that touches the bowl lip. And I'm going, okay, this is pretty good. Reacted really well to the wood. You can see all the fine grain and all the little scrap pieces. So I'm thinking, okay, let's see what we can make out of it. So got a waste block on top, super glued everything down the way that I like to do. Got brand new screws and appropriately putting on the faceplate. If you guys watched a video I did about a week ago, actually I don't know when I'm going to release that video, so I'm going to stop talking. There's a video where I don't put in the screws appropriately and it goes horribly wrong. If you haven't seen that one yet, or if I haven't posted it, it just depends. So we put this behemoth of a block onto the lathe itself, getting everything nice and turned down. Initially, if you watched my first video that I did on this epoxy, when I first started doing that bowl, I got a lot of like glass, a lot of like dust, but this one went significantly more smooth. I guess I mixed the epoxy a lot better than I did for my initial bowl that I did on this epoxy. So you can see there we're getting really good ribbons. If you look at my arm, getting a lot of good shavings off of it. Really happy with the way it's going. You can see these long strands that are coming off. Very similar material to when we did our initial epoxy bowl using this particular brand. Now we're just hitting it with the round carbide tool, doing a lot of the touch-up and finer work that we usually will do. The flat skew is doing a majority of the work up into this point, and we've got a good blank going. Really happy with it and how it's reacting to the wood itself. So overall, right now, I'm pretty happy with it. Going to take the tailstock off, and now we are going to work on the mortise. And you can see how smooth that blank is, like when the lathe isn't moving. So really happy the way it's turning out right now. Getting everything nice and even. Had some bubbling, as you could see from the beginning of the video with the blank itself. We had a lot of bubbling, I guess when it's in the pressure pot, it just does weird stuff. So you'll get these like weird bubbles and gaps. But this went pretty smooth, real easy material to work with. You see there, really good shavings, getting a lot of that material worked out. And there's my camera acting up again, but it zoomed in perfectly onto the faceplate. So if you guys know anything about Sony cameras and why it keeps doing that, please leave a comment. Help me out. I'm trying to be better. And now we run into my typical problem that I usually have on the channel, which is using a copious amount of super glue and me spending a crazy amount of time trying to get all of that off and get that faceplate off and trying to get everything off. So between the chisel, the hammer, and trying to wedge everything out, this ended up taking quite a bit of time. I gotta stop using a lot of glue because it's taking up more time than I care to spend on it. But I don't want anything flying off the lathe. If you guys have been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know how many times I have things fly off the lathe. So eventually we got that waste block off, and now we are just doing some of the finer material, trying to get that waste block taken care of. There was a lot of scrap on the superficial surface of the bowl, so that's why I'm coming back with the the round carbide tool, and then eventually just switching it up to the square carbide tool. You can see how much easier that is just dealing with that type of material. And now we're just doing the finer portions of the lip of the bowl, trying to get everything, you know, evened out before we start the actual gouging process itself. And then we're coming back and then just flattening everything out, make sure everything is nice and even. And it went relatively well up until this point. So I don't know why I did a British accent there, by the way. I'm sorry. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing this commentary, so I'm a little bit tired. I do apologize. But back to the project here. Material worked off really well. The gouging portion went really smooth, at least from what I could remember. And now all we're doing is getting that edge worked out, hitting it with a combination of the round and the gouge itself. And I've pretty much learned my lesson about not going too deep on the side edges. If you saw a video I did about 2 months ago, you saw that I ended up taking off the entire sides of the bowl because I ended up gouging down too far. But overall, the material worked really well. The epoxy set up with the wood scrap really well. I didn't have a lot of issues. This basically drove the same way that my Total Boat resin works, the same way my East Coast resin works. So I would highly recommend this epoxy. It is pricey. It's about $100 for a gallon. So I just wanted to try something different. And overall, really good product. Like I said in the initial video that I did, material worked off real well. It reacted well to the wood and to the glitter that we put in there, also to the color. So overall, really happy with this product. The only downside is it is a little bit more pricey. So if you've got the money to spend, it's good stuff. But, you know, I guess everybody's got their own preference. But I use East Coast resin for a majority of my stuff, but this stuff works really well. I was really happy with it. And you'll see here in a little bit when we get finished with the project, it turns out really well. So here we are near the bottom of the bowl, and now we're just taking small, simple little strokes, trying to get everything down to a depth that we like. And again, like I do in so many other videos, I'm never happy with the gouging portion of it. I always say that I'm good at a certain depth, and then once I stop the lathe and really get a feel for how deep we are, I always think I can go just a little bit further, and one of these days it's going to catch me and bite me in the ass to where I puncture through the mortise, and I'm going to totally hate that. But luckily for us in this project, it worked out relatively smooth, not a lot of issues, and by this time I'm fairly happy with where we are in the bowl, and I'm going to make a couple of more strokes before I finally say, okay, we've had enough. But I'm never happy with how far we go. I always think we can go a little deeper. So here we are, finally done. You can see the workbench there, covered in scrap and wood and everything else. Not as thick as we did with the initial bowl that we had all those thick ribbons, but you know, material worked off the bowl really well. So it covered the workbench, and now we're just hitting it with the sanding, going from 340 all the way up to 1500, and then coming back and hitting it with the micro mesh, and it sands really well. Now that I think about it, you know, it's really good epoxy. So if you're in the market, like I said, try it out. You know, it will work. So here we are, just polishing everything up here toward the end. really like the material. I don't like the bottom portion of it. I did gouge a little way down, and that like scrap pine looks a little disgusting. So that was on me going a little too deep, or deeper than I should have. But overall, it turned out really well. I really like the project. You can see the difference in the top epoxy versus where the glitter starts. So overall, really happy with it. Hope you guys like the project. Like I said, not a sponsored video. Go out, try different epoxies. I love doing these kinds of projects. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next project. Peace. Okay, so the project is done. Here it is. I love the bolt up until I get to this point. This point, it's just a junk piece of pine that just looks absolutely disgusting. I managed to go through the entire, almost through the tannin there, so that's what that actually is. But overall, really happy with it. Using that super clear epoxy. Again, this one has wood and stuff in it, so really happy with the way it turned out. Maybe just not this part, but overall, I would give it, pretty good marks. So hope you guys enjoyed the project. Hope you guys are subscribed. You guys are probably watching this in November, December, sometime in the fall, but there it is. Really cool bowl. Hope you guys got something out of it. Don't forget to subscribe again. All right, catch you in the next one. Bye.